Hello, everyone. This is John Light here, CEO at Evermite, and I've got Scott McKay, who's our project lead here at Evermite.
Howdy.
Yeah, Scott there. Okay, so we have another question that me and some clients, a few of our team members, and some associates have been discussing, and the question is around when building a website, should you use a really popular CMS platform like WordPress, Drupal, SiteCore, Expression Engine? There's quite a few of them. Should we use one of those, or should we actually build a CMS from the ground up? And I think most of the time, the default choice is to use a popular CMS platform like a Drupal or a WordPress or Umbraco or one of these ones. That's normally a default choice, but sometimes it's not as clear cut as that. And that's why we want to discuss that here in this video. Scott, do you have any opening remarks that you can think about with relations to this before I jump into some of the details?
Yeah, I think before looking at the technical side of things, just from the client point of view, if they have a lot of staff who are familiar with a CMS, maybe they're already using WordPress and they want a new site that uses the existing data and they just want the existing interface, or they need a CMS where right now they don't know every option they're going to want. So sometimes by using WordPress, they know that later they can add a social media widget or a calendar or a sidebar easily, and they've got future flexibility. With a completely custom build, it's not the same. Obviously, you have to build every element they may want in the future. So I think starting with the client needs is a good place. Figure out what they're planning in the future.
Yeah. So yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that makes sense. I think then on the other hand, sometimes developers or certain vendors or even clients might suggest that they want something that's more custom, in which case, when you're working within a CMS platform, it can be quite restricting. So I think I'm just going to go through some of these points that I've jotted down, at least to distinguish between the advantage of an off-the-shelf CMS platform versus something that you build from scratch. For a lot of clients that we work with, oftentimes they have certain requirements. So let me just pull up my notes here. Right. So a lot of our clients, they have certain requirements, and that really push them towards using an off-the-shelf CMS platform or popular platform. So if they do have a lot of requests for different plugins or libraries, so really common plugins and modules that clients often ask for are event calendars, discussion forums, a blog section, an e-commerce component, multiple language support, a really sturdy permission system, a workflow approval process, so that when users, let's say different staff members can create content, but other people can approve it. They might even ask for other modules such as content galleries, or even modules that do integrations with other systems, such as integrating with Salesforce or integrating with SharePoint, integrating with your ERP, accounting software. So these are all really popular asks from our clients, and usually they ask for not just one, but several of these plugins to be working with their CMS platform. And if a CMS, or if the client has a need for these types of requirements, building something like this from scratch would take a long time. So if there's often an ask for one or several of these plugins, you're already naturally thinking about using a popular platform like a WordPress or a Drupal. What are your thoughts on that, Scott?
Yeah, I totally agree. Like something like WordPress, just having all the database calls and the security involved with those has been written and rigorously tested by crazy people who are constantly trying to hack it. So there's a level of security there that you may not have when you're building on your own from scratch. Like having a sign-on system with roles out of the box, and it's very customizable, so you can build off of that. But if you had to use that as your starting point to build from scratch, yeah, it's not just the building, it's the QA and the testing, and in different scenarios, seeing what you can break. Yeah, you do get a lot of options. And for some clients, one of their requirements is price. So the most options you can give them for a lower price is obviously a feature as well.
Yeah. Now you mentioned security, because that's another point that I have listed here is security of a platform. Now, when it comes to something like WordPress, there's a lot of debate and opinions on how secure WordPress is. But what I would say is that definitely a lot of our larger clients, let's say if they're hospitals or more public sector or even larger corporations, they do have a very strict request on security for the platforms that are being suggested. And oftentimes in their request for proposals, they want to know whether you've performed threat risk assessments on the platform or on projects similar or past projects that have implemented those solutions. And a lot of those threat risk modeling processes that you go through, um, part of how part of how secure that project is could be its popularity. And something like WordPress is extremely popular, which does leave it more subject to, let's say, being because it's more well known by the community, it's more likely to be attacked from a hacker's perspective. But there's also a lot of other developers that are actually working to develop patches and security upgrades for that platform. Um, so there's that aspect. I don't want to go too much into detail on how to actually perform threat risk modeling. That could be a completely separate video, but it's easier to claim for some of these platforms, regardless of whether it's true or not. But it's just easier to claim that there's been more security audits done on platforms like Drupal and SiteCore and such. Any thoughts on that, Scott?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, comparing one platform to another, obviously it's difficult. That's a more difficult thing to assess. But if you're looking at using a platform versus a custom solution, something like WordPress, where there's millions of installs out there on different servers with different versions of PHP, different versions of MySQL. There's a lot of that's a lot of QA essentially, and people are constantly on their own trying to hack it. And then when they get results, they submit those to WordPress, who then take that information and look at fixing it. If you're using a custom solution, someone could hack into your system and you simply don't know. You don't know every detail or if it got installed somewhere with a different version of PHP that maybe you hadn't tested on. With the thing with WordPress is if something gets hacked, you find out about it pretty quickly, and the big names who are big, plugin developers will immediately build patches, let you know there was a hack, how to fix it, and that info is coming in. With a custom solution, you just may never know if you are hacked.
Right. Yeah. There is one pro for the. There is one advantage to the custom solution here, is that due to its lesser known, or it's not as popular as a WordPress, it's not as likely to be hacked, provided the developers have gone through at least the standard proper industry practices when it comes to security. They are a little bit more protected in that sense, but there's still a lot of other things that you have to consider when it comes to security. And even with larger platforms, if they do get hacked, it's hopefully through managed services that you do have systems administrators and other developers on the team who have intrusion detection software or other types of software to detect these breaches and breaches in security. So that's part of a managed service platform, which it's a slightly separate discussion from CMS platforms. But back to the original statement you said, Scott, is that yes, there is a community that will react pretty quickly to security threats that are known to these major platforms. Okay. Now, there are two other components that really favor CMS. The other one is because a platform, popular CMS platforms like WordPress and SiteCore and Drupal, Adobe Experience Manager, with these platforms, you will have a large community of developers to rely upon. And this makes it easier to onboard additional staff, or if you need to change vendors for any reason, that when yeah, you get a larger talent pool to draw upon to support your platform, right? And you can go on forums, you can go on Stack Overflow, you can reach out to job boards. I think you can almost pretty much find a WordPress developer or even a Drupal developer anywhere these days. SiteCore developers are going to be more premium and expensive, but they're out there. There are entire meetups just dedicated to these types of developers. So that's one big advantage for using another CMS, a CMS platform that is well known. Any ideas, Scott, on that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. Obviously, there's the support available for you to do the build, but I think for the client, it gives them confidence that if for whatever reason they aren't gonna work with you anymore, they need to move on, or for budgetary reasons they want another agency to be involved, they know they have a product they can take to another agency who should be able to step in fairly easily. If things are coded with whatever the pattern is for that CMS, they know that that someone else can look at it and help. With a purely custom solution, I think the client might feel locked in that you're the only developer that can help them. And you want to, and I think most responsible developers want their code to be easy to build on by other developers.
Yeah, and like you said, that some clients feel like they're locked into that one vendor. If that vendor pitched a custom solution, they'll feel like they're locked into that vendor. And that vendor or that developer that's pitched a custom solution, they might make the claim that they're going to use a very popular development framework, right? So framework is differentiated from platform. Frameworks are meant for developers to build something quickly, whereas platforms are just complete business solutions that clients can use right off the bat. Now, a developer that pitches a custom solution built with a popular framework, let's say with ASP.NET, they have some CRUD-like applications that can spin off a CMS really quickly, or Sales.js, or any of these types of frameworks. They might claim that these are very popular frameworks and other developers can easily just experience with those technologies can easily jump in. So that is a valid point that is possible, but I'll speak more to that a little bit later into this video on when that might be a good idea. Okay, so yes, popularity of the framework means you get a large community that can support it. Now, this brings up one more big point when it comes to using a popular CMS platform, is the library of themes that are available. And this is especially convenient for clients that might be more on a budget. So oftentimes with a lot of these more popular CMS platforms, is that you might have a whole library of skins and templates that you can choose from that you can easily bind to your CMS. And developers and designers can have the option to just make tweaks to these existing templates and you can be out the door. So that's a very powerful, affordable way for lower budget clients to really get out the door, right? So you have that option when it comes to using a popular CMS platform. Scott, any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, especially when you're talking about a client who has maybe a very simple website, but it was written back in the days, a couple of static HTML pages, flipping that over to WordPress means that they can edit the copy anytime they want to. And a designer can make quick work of it and give them something that looks like a huge step up, at a very low rate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think those are the 4 biggest popular reasons why you would want to use an off-the-shelf popular CMS platform. So I'll just quickly summarize those 4 points. One is you want to leverage the community leverage the library of modules like event calendars, e-commerce plugins, payment systems, and such. Second reason is for security reasons, a lot of these more popular platforms will have a lot of vendors would have performed some kind of threat risk assessment on these types of platforms before pitching it to much larger clients. Another reason is because you want that large support of community of developers and designers who are familiar with that platform. And the final one is there are libraries of templates and themes that you could use, especially for the more budget conscious businesses and clients. So those are the 4 biggest reasons. Scott, any other reasons that you can think of that's really popular, or a really good reason for why one might choose a CMS platform like WordPress and Drupal and SiteCore and such?
I think those are the key things, and keeping it customer focused. Probably on the developer side of things, yeah, if you're working in a team and you're using a platform, then you're all kind of coding with the similar in a similar way. You don't have a scattered group of people with their own coding concepts using different patterns. You're sort of, it kind of forces you into a way of coding, so you're all literally on the same page. It's not a a huge thing, but it does help keep things organized, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So those are the reasons why you might want to consider a popular CMS platform first. Now let's speak to the other angle. When should you actually build a CMS from scratch, or ask one of your vendors to build a CMS from scratch? And I would say oftentimes we see a situation is if none of the options we've mentioned previously apply. You don't care about all the different modules and plugins that are available. You don't, security. You will always care about security, but with you don't need. Actually, I'll probably want to talk to that in a separate video. You do care about security, but it's going to be implemented slightly differently. You definitely don't care about all the different themes and available templates that are out there. And maybe, when it comes to a large community of developers to support it, maybe you're not as worried about that either. Right. So when would those situations apply? Now that situation applies often is if you have a requirement for a very custom type of website, and sometimes when you see it with, let's say, for example, architects, they have some really fancy, really highly animated, really premium quality feeling website, and the way the content is structured, the way the website interacts, in some ways it's almost like a video game to a certain degree. Or sometimes you have these websites that they're using HTML5 canvas, and it's a lot of animations, a lot of interacting components. So under those situations, you may not actually want to use a popular CMS platform, even if you have this concept of a headless CMS, which that I can also talk about in another video.
Yeah.
It's just because if you have a really highly animated or really customized website, and a really premium quality feeling website, oftentimes both the designers and developers need to be free from the constraints that a CMS platform imposes. So they might want to just build their own custom database and a simple CMS tool to allow a business's staff to change the content quickly. And when I say content, they don't think in terms of pages often. They think in terms of actual content, like content as in cars versus a school versus chairs versus electronics, as opposed to page by page thinking. They're thinking more in object type of thinking. So they might build a CMS that allows employees to simply manage something like that, and then they'll push it to some really custom designed front end interface. So we've seen situations like that where it definitely makes sense to build a framework, build a CMS from scratch. So, Scott, what are your thoughts on that?
I think, yeah, if I had to really generalize, I would say, when it starts to seem like it's not a regular website, if it starts to feel like a web app, then immediately you know that you might be limited by a CMS. Not to say that you can't, take something like WordPress and build what looks like a web app. If it's a complicated web app, then you might want to start with a framework and build up from there. If you find that you're going to be doing a lot of customized stuff in the admin section, when I think of CMS, the admin section should be relatively the same, with some options and features that are all based on what you see on the web, what you see public. But if the person in the admin section is generating reports and doing a lot of complicated things with the data in the admin, and it starts to feel like more of a web app, then I think that it's worth considering, a different approach. Maybe a CMS will still work, depending on the complexity of it. But that's when I think that, it's time to start thinking about other ways to go. when it's not a website.
Yeah. And especially if that CMS is going to start to push content to mobile apps, maybe other platforms. Maybe you have to push some content into an exact target, or you have to push some that content into MailChimp or push it into a CRM platform. Maybe that starts to be a consideration for a custom build solution. And we've tried using Drupal 8 as a headless CMS to power several types of front-end application. Although we could do it, it just takes a little bit more time to force the JSON or let's say the API output to be consistent in a way that's easily consumed by all the different client devices that need to connect to it. I mean, it could be done, but if you actually worked from a custom framework, the rollout would be much faster under those situations. So I think it really comes down to what your needs are, how quickly you can get out the door, and what your budget is like. So those things really help you decide which solution to go with. So I think we kind of covered everything on this subject when it comes to deciding between a custom framework to build a CMS or just use a popular solution. Any other concluding remarks that you might have, Scott?
No, I think that really does cover it. I mean, obviously, there's no one answer. It's different for every client, but I think, yeah, if you're looking at what they need and it's easy to do in a CMS, and that gives them flexibility, then that's a good starting place. But if it's clear that the features they need is going to be a lot of customization, and the advantages of that you're getting with a CMS maybe don't add up, then you start considering other options. It doesn't mean you automatically do that, because sometimes just the security, the sign-on, and the basics of a customizable admin, you get that with WordPress, and you can have that be entirely private if you want. You can choose to never publish pages. So there's a lot of flexibility there. But yeah, you gotta, depending on how much customization you need, it's on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So yeah, talk with your agency, talk with your developers, talk with your designers. They should be able to give you more feedback on a case-by-case basis. Okay, so I guess that's it for this question and answer. We'll continue next time. See ya.
All right. Bye.